Welcome to Home Dad Chat, brought to you by the National At-Home Dad Network. My name is Brock,
My name is Danny.
and we are here to talk about life as stay-at-home dads. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
No, I don't want much. I even love handmade crafts made of macaroni. Come on now, you should know me. Times I might eat too much. No worry about my weight. Got the dad bod rocking on me. Sketches on my feet. Cargo shorts look good on me. I'm a dad, that's what I do.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Home Dad Chat. Okay, hold on a second. Take two. Hey, everybody.
Professionals.
And you're not going to open it for me?
No.
But I can't open it. It needs a bottle opener.
Well, you didn't ask for opening.
I asked for a beer.
Your wife is one of those people who
didn't
has to
ask for
talk to
opening.
herself when she's on camera. Did you notice?
Yeah,
She's always looking at the camera, and I'm like, no, I'm over here. My eyes are up here. Excuse me.
She brought me a beer but didn't open it. I have a glass right here. All right.
You train them, and they just
I know, right? Oh, wait.
Here you are, Lord Loosh.
Oh, well, hey, we'll get into that in a second. You know,
Well, I'm going to say I have a handmade bottle opener with me at my desk at all times. Thanks.
I should just keep this one here because honestly, like I have two at the fridge
and that is the official Dimwickle Designs 2022 Phoenix Home DadCon bottle opener. Correct.
It is. Yeah. I'm gonna pour my New Belgium 1554 dark ale and welcome everybody officially to this episode of Home Dad Chat, which
on the ball.
I'll tell you, this is probably the craziest opening to an episode that we've had, but that's okay because this is episode 96. So,
and I have to say too that I'm really, this should be I want to be our most polished tonight because our guest tonight is just someone that I'm really excited to talk to. But I don't know. I don't want to say the name and everything, but is a PhD, talks about issues that directly impact us regularly, is an author, and it was actually recommended by two other people to us. Brian Anderson with Fathering Together being one of them. And just like, yeah, you need to talk to this person. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I looked up, I'm like, oh yeah. Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there all day long and I'm thinking, it's November's almost over. Maybe I could just go ahead and shave all this nasty hair on my face and shave my head again. Cause I look unkempt and I do not look good. I do not grow a beard well. I look like a little, I don't know what it is, but like a neck beard almost. It's just not good.
You're good, man.
I hope so.
Yeah.
It's a podcast, not a video.
Right. Yeah. Anybody who watches the video gets all the extra goodies involved in it. So
we can hope that the doctor will. But anyway, do you want to do introductions and then we can?
No, I wanted to, real quick before we do that, though, I wanted to brag about something. So Josh Domash reminded me last week that he had not received his Home Dad Chat sticker because, of course, he wasn't able to come to Home Dad Con. So I, was handing them out to everybody while we were there. And I chucked in that and a dads don't babysit sticker in there because he didn't have one of those and sent them to him. And then he so kindly sent me back a handwritten letter with a wax seal envelope and just this wonderful letter where he calls me his lordship, House of Loosh.
Yes.
And Lady Corey, and just it's great. I love it. I mean, it's one, you don't get too many handwritten letters these days. Two, it's all in cursive too, which is even better. But yeah, I mean, it's just a great little thing. I might have found myself a new pen pal.
Cool. Yeah.
For those who know what a pen pal is.
I was going to say, maybe we should find that one. People. My kids had a pen pal for a very short time when they were younger, but it was one of the other dads in the network, and it was his kid wanting to send letters. Then my kids wanting to, and they were written like a 5-year-old would write a letter. I mean, they really weren't that great, but it was pictures, and then they're playing soccer, and we still have those. And the kids are like, "Can we pull the letters down?" I'm like, "I don't know. They're kind of fragile now. We don't want to get them ripped up or something." So But
no,
anyway,
that's cool. But yeah, so anyway, I just kind of wanted to brag about that because I thought that was really cool. I got that in the mail when I came back from Thanksgiving. So yeah, well, like I said, this is episode 96, which is crazy in itself. And I think that it's going to be super exciting to have on this guest because we're going to be talking about gender equality or inequality. I have some interesting questions about that to me personally, because I feel like there's still quite a few things that like I'm like, okay, what does this look like? I don't know, like I'm still trying to figure it all out. And I feel like a lot of people, when you talk to them, have a very they have a big misconception as to what that term even means. And so I really want to get their take on this and see exactly where they're coming from. And they just published a book about it as well back in June. So it'll be really interesting to talk to them about that as well. So we'll be bringing on, and I'm going to butcher her name. Do you know how to pronounce her last name?
Well, I would assume it's Mangino.
Okay. I didn't know.
I can't imagine it being anything else. So Mangino? It's Mangino. Please say Mangino. Make my night. Dr. Mangino? Oh, yes, that's it. That's what I can quit now. I can leave. I go.
We'll find out.
I believe it is Dr. Kate Mangino.
Okay.
And we will make sure here in a moment when we talk to her. But we've only spoken in email up to this point. So as far as I'm concerned, we're best friends, but she probably wouldn't recognize me in a crowd, obviously.
Well, apparently she's been following us on Twitter with the National At Home Dad Network. That's how she was like, oh yeah, like I've seen you guys before. So I felt pretty good about that. I felt like I was like almost celebrity status with that acknowledgement. So but yeah, so we'll bring her on here and get to talking about the topic of gender equality after this wonderful commercial. Become a member of the National At Home Dad Network, an organization focused on providing advocacy, community, education, and support. Connecting with households where dad is the primary caregiver of the children. We do this through our webinar and podcast series, mental health support groups, regular online social events, as well as our annual convention. The National At Home Dad Network is a 100% volunteer organization. Without the generous support of its members and the community around it, we would not be able to continue the work that we do. Becoming a member gives you access to past convention speaker presentations, the ability to vote for board members annually, and ensures that the organization's fees and bills are in positive standing. Oh yeah, it should not go unmentioned that there is some cool swag headed your way if you decide to become a member. For only $35 a year, your membership provides you with the exclusive content only we can generate, and you'll be supporting an organization that benefits families all around the country and world. By advocating for them, offering them community, providing education and guidance, and supporting them to grow in their parenthood journey. And one last thing, if you contribute $500 or more, you will become a lifetime member. Not only will you receive everything already mentioned, but also a certificate recognizing your status and an exclusive National At Home Dad Network challenge coin with our trademark logo, Dads Don't Babysit. So, what are you waiting for? Become a member today. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Like we had mentioned before, we have a special guest with us tonight. We're going to be talking to Dr. Kate Mangino about her book and about the topic of gender equality. And I'm just so excited to finally connect all of the dots, all the emails that have gone out over the past month to finally make this happen tonight. So how are you doing today?
I'm great, and I'm really excited to be with you. And I've been a fan. I've been following you guys on Twitter for a while until it implodes. I'm still looking at what you are doing, and so we might have to switch platforms pretty soon. But no, I think it is a mutually exciting evening because I am also a big fan of what you do.
I feel like my head inside of the screen? I feel like it just got really big.
It is swelling. Brock does the majority, like the lion's share, as we would call it, of the Twitter and social media work, and he's been doing it for years. And of course, we're a fully volunteer organization, so you really get nothing for it other than an occasional accolade like that. and
I'll
Brock
take it.
deserves it. So yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely. You take it while you
It's
can
like
get it.
parenting.
I'm just gonna put that in my back pocket. I'll hold on to that.
That's right.
Look at it on those really hard
Someone
days where I'm like,
will
what am I
mention
doing?
it. Someone will mention your
And it
book at
takes
some
so
point.
much time, right? I mean, it's
It
a lot of time.
It is a
Yep.
lot of time. It looks like, and too, from seeing your website and everything, you spend a lot of time doing a lot of things online and trying to connect with people and getting different information out there. So I'm excited to talk about that with you tonight. But for those who have not heard of you before and things like that, tell us a little bit about who you are and what your family dynamic is.
Absolutely. So I have been working in the space of international development my whole career, which is an odd place, I think, to come from for this kind of work. But I've been doing work overseas for, I'm going to age myself, but over 20 years to do social change around themes that have to do with gender. And that always looks a little bit different depending on who I work with. I've worked full time for NGOs, and now I consult and just work for different projects at a time. I've worked on prevention of early childhood marriage. I've worked on prevention of HIV in women and girls. Women's empowerment, healthy masculinity. So all of these projects, but they all kind of boil down to gender norms, like identifying harmful gender norms and then trying to get over harmful gender norms. And I was doing some research in Indonesia several years ago, and I was sitting in the middle of a jungle with a group of lovely men talking about masculinity. And one of them said, "What are men like in the United States? Like, are they open to sitting down and having these conversations? Are they self-reflecting?" And I didn't know what to tell him. I didn't really have an answer. And so and at the same time, for a while, I was frustrated at the disconnect between my work and my personal life. I'm a parent. I have two kids. They're now 11 and 8. When I came up with this book idea, they were 2 and 5. So that's how long it takes to put a book together. And I felt like I was having these very sophisticated conversations around the world because of my work, because I was seen as the gender expert and I would come in and people would sit down and talk to me. But in my playground down the street, I was having very gendered conversations, and the expectations that my community and my family had for me versus what they had for my husband was like crazy 1950s. And so that was frustrating me too. So between these, kind of events, I just thought, this book project manifested into something where I could have a conversation with my own community, right, about gender norms and household divide and parenting and all of that good stuff.
Dang.
Great.
Yeah, you've been busy. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So
I told Brock earlier, I said, because it's, you may be aware, but it's Movember for men's health and what have you. So I've been letting my hair grow, and I usually have a mohawk, and now I've got this awful thing. And so I cover it with a hat, and my facial hair is terrible, but you do what you can. And so I'm letting it go until the end of the year. And I told Brock, I said, I really just want to go shave real quick. I look like I haven't had a shower maybe or something. My hair, like I haven't shaved in a month. Right. And because it is so very impressive, the amount of work that you've done and just the accolades that you have had in your work in gender equity. And I have not read your book yet. I do have it on my Kindle list, but for whatever reason, there's just a bunch. There's a bunch on there.
I know. And what parent has time to read a book? I mean, that's the irony.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say I will probably end up listening to it as I drive up to Milwaukee for our board retreat. The last time I drove to a board retreat, I did the exact same thing. There was a book that actually the entire board was asked to read, and so I just popped it on, turned it on, and that's what I listened to for 5 hours as I drove to Chicago that time. So
awesome. And the woman who did my book, Suhaila, we've become friends. She's an absolutely lovely narrator and did a great job. So
that's awesome.
You can enjoy her voice on your way.
That's cool. No, that's great.
Nice.
That's really great. But yeah, I mean, so here's the thing. Like you mentioned that, you're sitting around with these men in the jungle in Indonesia and having this conversation, and they're asking what what men in America are like. I don't know. Like, I think for me, I'm at a place where I'm constantly getting around guys and having conversations. Like that's but I know other guys in other parts of the country that find that to be very difficult. So it is very much an unbalanced scenario as far as like where you go and who you're around, because I mean, you could definitely go to one part or one state and talk to guys, and I could even say it almost in north and south versions of the state and get completely different aspects. It's just, I think it comes down to what guys are yearning for in those communities. So if you've got a bunch of guys that are like, yeah, like let's get together and talk, then great, you're going to build that. But if you've got guys who are like, nope, I'm going to lone wolf this thing, then that it's going to make it very difficult. And I hear that all the time in our community with the National At Home Dad Network from guys who are like, I live in this town, and just the mere mention of me being a stay-at-home dad just is a sour, bitter taste in the mouth for anybody else. And it just, I can't even connect with these guys that are in here who we all have the same foundational, we're dads, but they want to play up so many other gender norms into it and make it so difficult to have any kind of relationship.
Yeah, I'm really happy to hear you say that, because that's kind of what I told them. So I'm glad that I was somewhat accurate. I just said, so it doesn't matter if you're talking about masculinity or anything else. It's very hard to say Americans are blank, right? Because there are so many of us, and we are so incredibly different. Yeah. Exactly. So it depends on where you live and your own sort of subculture and your family and your friends and your network. And so I said, there are men who are like you, who don't put necessarily a value on income generation and think I'm going to provide for my family in other ways. And they're very willing to push gender norms and to write a script that works for them, as opposed to following, what's been role modeled to them. And there are a lot of people who are super traditional, and maybe they've thought it through and maybe they haven't, but they're still sort of going through these motions of a really traditional life. So that's what I told them too. And I don't think they were satisfied with that answer, but
I was listening.
I'm not satisfied with that answer either. I long for a world where you say, well, how are dads like in your country? And we're able to say, oh yeah, they're absolutely, the equity is there. Yeah. The dads do just as much. Is that my wife and I have had an ongoing discussion over the last month of what we would define as a fatherly role in a relationship or in a family, and what we would define as a motherly role. And we've boiled it down to there's really nothing. I mean, when you really get into it, there are things, of course, that only a mom can do. And that's true, but because only a woman could do those things, let's say. And technically, I'm sure there's things that only a man could do as well. But beyond really childbirth, everything else is just kind of, my wife and I kind of describe it as we're just kind of an egalitarian thing. Who can do this job? Yeah. Can you do this job, or can I do this job? Okay, we can both do the job. Who does it better, or who enjoys it? Well, there you go. You enjoy doing this. And there are jobs that would fall into the motherly role that my wife just excels at. She is so good at it. And I'm not. There's like certain things, especially when it comes to like college planning, which may not be a mother or father thing, but as an example, she's just much better at it because she went to college. She's got her master's. She did all of these things. I have none of those things, and I don't have really a grasp on it. And I have no trouble saying, oh no, you're better at this. And it never comes down to be blunt, who has the penis? Oh, well, then they need to do that. I mean, it just makes no sense, right, to us. And up until the time that we agreed that I was going to be an at-home parent, we really never had any major issues when it came to gender. It was just like, who did it better? But then when you put kids in the role, fathering as opposed to mothering a child, really, it's the same. You may come at it a little bit different. There are differences in how you would approach a job. I have a shop vac up in my kitchen. Most moms probably never would have thought to have a shop vac in their kitchen, just because they probably never got exposed to a shop vac.
What's a shop vac?
Yeah, there you go. Okay. So it's basically one you would use in your workshop that will suck up large pieces of debris, liquids, everything. It's a vacuum that will take liquids, dry. So you can, you spilled your bowl of whatever again. Okay, whoop, and
Got
it's
it.
all gone, right?
Got it.
And it's something that really, again, if you were not exposed to shop vacs, you would have no reason to have that, right? But it again didn't come down to, well, I'm a man, so I'm a father, so I'm gonna act like this, or I'm going to do it this way. And I love the thing I love most, I think, so far about your book is the cover, which is very shallow to say. And we should say this too, because the name of the book is Equal Partners: Improving Gender Equality at Home, which is great and a huge title, and I love it. But the cover is a list of chores, a list of things: help with homework, cook dinner, provide for family, laundry, groceries, and they're all kind of crossed off. And every single one basically comes down to, in my house, who's best at that. If you want somebody to help with homework, is that mom or dad or both? If you want somebody to cook dinner, is that mom or dad or both? And I love that you have that on there, that because that's the main, I would say, meat of the discussion that I've always had with my wife, and a lot of our at-home dads have. It's who does what, right? So let's list these chores. Who wants to do which job? Well, again, who's better at that job, or who loves that job? So just the cover of it, and I hate to say it, I don't mean to shout, I will read the book, I promise, but it really hit me very well. So if nothing else, you did a great job in choosing the title and the cover. So,
Well,
for
thank you.
shallow place, raise.
When the cover first came back, all of the chores that were listed that the designer had, and I agree, I like the colors, I like that it doesn't like repel men. I didn't want a pink book that looked angry. And the designer did a fantastic job, but all of the tasks were physical tasks. It was walk the dog, fix the sink, grocery shop. And so my agent actually came up with the idea, hey, why don't we also include some cognitive labor in there? So things like be authentic and allow vulnerability, to kind of mix it up, to show that even from the cover, we're not just talking about designating chores. You can't stop there. It goes so much deeper. And until you understand why we do the chores that we do and how those fall into different categories and buckets, that's kind of where the change comes, when you understand what's underneath those actions.
Yeah. So me, my background, and I'm kind of curious on yours as well with this, but my background with my family, like my mom and dad, this is not even a conversation. Like my parents were very balanced when it came to, I knew I could go to them for pretty much any of this stuff. Like it wasn't any big deal. And I think that one of the things that I kind of scratch my head at and sort of like just wonder every time I come around people who have such a just an imbalanced understanding or misunderstanding is like, why is this such a big issue for you? Like, I don't get it. That one, this is not the 1950s. Two, like, you obviously either you're sleeping in under a rock and are not seeing that the world has evolved into a place where it doesn't matter male or female. Like, you can do it all, and why make a big deal about it? But it for whatever reason, like there's just some people that have just dug into this idea. And I know that I've had conversations with especially guys. Like I've had some conversations with some younger guys, and it even seems like that these younger generations are having a difficult time like with it. And it comes down to, honestly, like how they're brought up. Like, I mean, it really goes down to that. But at the same time too, like I'm just kind of curious, like, was your background that you saw an imbalancement of this, or and you felt like the need to sort of champion it, or was it something else?
So I was brought up, my parents both worked, and my father, I think, was ahead of his time. So was born in 1976. So my childhood was in the late 70s, 80s, early 90s. And that's when we actually saw a pretty big cultural shift. We have these chore diaries that go back to 1965. And we see that between 65 and 85, men's participation in the home shot up from 15% to 33%. And I think that reflects women entering the workforce as well. So that 65 to 85 time period was a time of big change in our country. And I think my dad was one of those men who stepped up and did more. You know, he cooked dinner. That was just his job. My mom remains a sketchy chef. And when I was a kid, it was like, oh, mom's making dinner, look out. And so I did see something different than the norm growing up. However, my dad did not do a lot of cognitive labor. I think my mom was still the house manager, and I think she still organized camps and organized school stuff and was the point of contact for a lot of extracurricular activities. I think she managed our family calendar. So I think my dad did more than the average father for sure. We've had this conversation since the book came out, but I don't think it was 50-50. And he would agree with me that my mom was still doing a lot of the cognitive labor. I agree with you that I think we're really kind of stuck. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to write the book, is because there are so many people that think we have reached equality. Like, check the box, let's move on to something different because we're done. And, you know, part of my book is just to say, no, we're not done. So in 1985, men's participation in the home, and these are only in different sex couple households, so we have very limited data, but was at 33%. In 2020, it's at 35%. We've only changed 2% from 1985 to 2020. And that's almost like a plateau. I mean, that's kind of sad. So I think we're still stuck in this place where we have seen a big difference. Men are doing so much more than their fathers or grandfathers. I don't know too many men that have a problem with changing diapers or strapping on a baby Bjorn or doing grocery shopping or cooking dinner. But a lot of that family calendar, family planning, agenda keeping, cognitive labor, managing of the household, anticipating all those little needs, things that you get because you're stay-at-home parents, so you know what I'm talking about. But a lot of dads are not doing that.
Yeah.
Or I just don't want to put it on dads, but in dual partnerships, there's one person that's doing about a third of the work and one person that's doing about 2/3 of the work. And then that can be any gender, right? We just see this pattern happening over and over again.
Right. Yeah. And well, and with that, just so one of the things with that imbalancement comes into play with also too finances and things along those lines. And I feel like the conversation that we are constantly seeing and having online with the community of dads is things like you know, our money versus my money versus their money type of situation, and how just imbalanced that is. And Danny and I have had that conversation with our wives actually on a podcast episode before, or even you know, hey, like I need a break type of deal, like I need, you know, and just that idea of understanding for either a partner in the fashion of like, you know, if the person who's working all day out of the house and it's just like I still need some time to just sort of like figure it out, but the person who's at home says the same thing, okay, well, instead of fighting about it or getting mad that you're both the displaced, like each of you come with a way to get it time to have that breath, you know, when everybody comes back together. And I feel like those are the things that you know, I feel like this kind of falls in line with what you're talking, what this book is representing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's a great question for new couples to have with each other. Do you think that the person who earns more money doesn't have to do as much at home? I think that's a really important question to talk about, because I think there's a lot of assumptions. And then you get in the middle of it and you've been married 10 years and you've got 2 kids and you're like, wait, you think that? Right.
Yeah.
So I think another really good question is, does the person who works more hours get to do less in the house? And I just think that having these conversations, you know, talking about what was your home like growing up? What was your childhood like? And do you want to emulate that with our family, or do you want to change that? I just think there's so many assumptions that we make, and having those really hard conversations as early as possible in the relationship is really healthy. And I know everyone's like, when I talk to people who are like doing relationship kind of pods, they're like, Kate, no one talks about that when they're dating. And I'm like, I know, because when you're dating, it's fun and it's physical and it's romantic and everything's great. And who wants to sit down and talk about? But, you know, having a few hard conversations up front could save you a world of frustration and hurt down the road.
I completely agree.
And also just give you an understanding of who your partner is, even if you still absolutely, this is the person for me, knowing in advance how they're going to act or respond to the way you act or those situations you run into. I think those are amazing questions. My wife and I went through a little bit of, I wouldn't say counseling per se. It was more like one of the priest or pastors just asked us some questions about, who and what, and are you going to have kids? And they were wonderful questions that you should definitely talk with your partner about. Are we going to have kids? Because again, just like anything else we could say, if I go into the relationship assuming, well, of course we're going to have kids. My family, we all have kids. That's what we do. And then your partner is like, oh no, I don't ever want kids. That's a split that you really can't come back from.
Yeah.
But even little thing, I shouldn't say little things, but one of the questions that we had is the age old. Well, if you were in a situation, there was a house fire and it was either save your partner or your child, which one would you save? And you could only save one. There's no way to save both. And like with my wife and I'm immediately go, well, of course I'd save you. What are you talking about? Why is this even a question? And obviously a little bit of a moron, didn't really have any idea that other, opinions could exist, I guess, because Marnie, my wife, immediately said, what? Oh, no, I'd save the child. What? No, why? And it was amazing. And it still actually comes back in our deeper conversations sometimes about how we act and react with each other and with the children. And it's still with her. And I'm okay with this. I'm not trying to be, don't pity me. I don't mean like this, but I'm second place. It just is. She loves me deeply. I mean, endearing woman. I love her, and she's just the moon and stars for me. And I feel like I'm the same for her. But the reality of it is, if it came down to it, I know that she wouldn't try to save me. And that sounds kind of dark and almost depressing. But the reality of it is understanding how your partner works, how they're built, what their expectations are, is such a valuable thing. And granted, maybe when you're dating, maybe that's not, you don't want to get in the heavy stuff, but if you're going to make this person your partner, come on.
Is this taped or is this a live thing?
This is all recorded.
This is recorded. There's someone at my door and my husband's out of town and they keep ringing my doorbell. Do you mind if I deal with this? I am
Go for
so
it.
sorry.
No, you're fine. I edit it all.
You want to stop now and start a new one, or how would you normally do that? Just what's your process? I'm not making suggestions.
You were talking about finances earlier, and something that came up in a conversation today, which I think is fascinating, especially for stay-at-home parents, is the question about insurance. When you go to get insured, have you talked about this on your pod before, is, okay, I earn less, so I get less insurance. And the assumption is that the earner can just hire someone to cover whatever that person at home is doing. But we all know that that's insane.
No,
and it would never.
That's a good word for it.
Right. My wife specifically tells people that she has, like, I think it's like $1 million policy or something like that on me, because if I were to unexpectedly die, like, who is going to be, the mechanic, the lawn care, the all these other different, like, running the kids to school, like all this different stuff. And she's just like, basically, like, I would have to step away from what I'm doing to be able to manage the house that way. And insurance is huge. Like, and that's another conversation that's been had in our community, is, what does that look like to have insurance, and what should we be looking at, that kind of thing. And so, I mean, my wife pulled out a policy for me through work, and then I did one on the side through a company type of, like, through a like an insurance company. So yeah, very important and very, like, overlooked.
Oh, very overlooked. And I think it just shows how our culture undervalues household work and caregiving work than an unpaid labor, because that is actually the irreplaceable stuff, right? Like, you can always find someone to fill your office chair, but you can't always find someone to take care of your kids or to take care of the house in the way that you want it cared for. And so I think that that's another interesting conversation about sort of valuing I think we just put so much weight on income. And I think that that's one of those gender norms that we need to break is it's not just about men and women and parents, but it's just about two partners and truly valuing what both people bring to the relationship beyond income.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I remember and looking through like some of the stuff that we were talking about in the emails that we were going back and forth. You were talking about the concept of providing for family. And I know that one of the things that Danny and I have discussed is the fact that I've had missionaries stay at my house from places like Africa and India, and they tend to really just have a hard time wrestling with the idea of the man in the house not going and bringing money home, like
Yep.
that I'm taking care of the kids and I'm taking care of the house and all these other things. But when you sit down with somebody who is not used to seeing that that role played out, and you get the opportunity to both show and share with them like what that looks like, and that doesn't take away from any type of leadership style or whatever it is that you have for your house, like it works. It's all about what works best for your family type situation. And it's interesting that after a conversation like that there's a better understanding for them, and they go back to their country. And I know like one of the guys specifically from Nigeria who was just like, I'm going back to like talk about this to my community because I know there are guys that are in a situation like this. Because I told him, I said, there are men who maybe they can't work for different reasons. They're disabled or, whatever it is, but they can still function. It's just that they can't do certain things in the workplace, because we've got dads like that, especially like veteran dads who are disabled. We've got dads who maybe they've gone through some very traumatic times in their lives, and being at home with the kids and taking care of the house is a way better place for them to be than actually in the workforce because of what they went through. And so I think that is a huge gender norm that is probably one of those ones that until you have a conversation with somebody and they actually see it, it's just, you have this ingrained idea of what it looks like for the common culture out there. And hopefully that's one of the big ones that I'm always talking about. Like this has got to break. People have got to realize this.
I totally agree with you. This has to change. I still think that we're raising girls with this implicit, unspoken prioritization of the home and the family. And I think we're still raising boys with this unspoken, assumed prioritization of earning income. And that's why, until you get there, a big part of my book is that I interviewed 40 men who are already equal partners in their home. And I didn't want to focus on what men do wrong. I wanted to focus on what men do right, because that's far more fun to research and to set, goals and have role models for people and say, this is what an equal household actually looks like. And this is how they make it work, and see if their stories helped other people. And when I interviewed those 40 guys, and they came from all over the United States and Canada, I made sure that, had a diverse representation in terms of education and ethnicity and jobs and, country of origin and all kinds of different identities. And what I heard over and over was this understanding that hit them at different points in their life, that providing for your family is way more than financial. You provide for your family emotionally. You provide for your family through care. You provide for your family through time. And that you have to look at this as a collective whole. And that when you divide it with your partner, you're looking at this whole. And it really doesn't work for one person to just focus on finance and say, I'm not going to be emotionally involved. I'm not going to do any caregiving. There's no way that can be equitable, because the financial part is often less time consuming than the caregiving and the emotional part. And I think when all of those men embraced that idea, right, however they came to that conclusion, it was really freeing for them. And then when they were successful in providing for their family in all of these ways, it felt incredibly rewarding to know that you were competent and able to totally holistically provide for your kids and your family.
Yeah, definitely.
I do want to go back to because you brought it up about, and this was probably, I think the phrase you used was cognitive labor, but the two things on your cover I wanted to talk about, and you already again spoke to it, but about it's not being vulnerable, allow vulnerability, and to be authentic, and the idea behind what an at-home parent is, hands down. If you say stay-at-home mom, I think most people, even today, would think, well, that's the person that stays home and does the laundry and does cleaning and cooking and takes the kids back and forth, the taxi and all that. But there's so much more involved in being a parent than providing financially or providing clean clothes. You know, those are great. Those are very necessary. Yes, we need those things. But the reality of what your child needs, and again, talking earlier about insurance, how valuable is it to have someone that will read a book to your child at bedtime? You can't, I mean, you cannot put a price on that, really. You can't. There was nobody in the world, I think, that I would pay money to, hey, will you read a book to my kids so I can finish up this dissertation or this, the TSA reports or whatever thing I've got it going. So I've got to send these emails, but
maybe
can you
once
read
a
to my
month
kid?
if you want to have dinner with your wife, but not every day.
Yeah. And have someone, of course, that can come in, but the needs of your child and providing for your child go so much further than the cooking and the cleaning and all of those and making a dollar. So the things, the realm of that a parent provides, and that's an at-home parent or a full-time parent, whatever it might be, is of course very, very important. How do you see, or how did you, when it was the EP40, was it? Okay. And I apologize, I don't remember.
No.
How did you find that in that data that you got from them? How well represented was that? How equal was that part of it? And just want to talk a little bit more, if you would, about how that falls in your book.
In terms of how were they participating with their kids? Is that in the time in the home? So what's really interesting, and I started out, it was hard to find these guys. And I'm honest about that, not because I think that there are so few of them. I wish I would have known about your network actually when I was doing my research, but ages ago. But I started, there's no network, like there's no Facebook group of equal partners. There was no like Twitter group. And so I had to sort of just shift through people that I knew and try to find them and identify them. So I wrote this protocol and I reached out to all my gender expert friends and said, like, do you know people like this? And most of them said, no, I don't. And a few of them said, yes, I do know someone like that. And they would refer me. And then it was a process. And then if they finally passed all of my steps and they agreed to be interviewed and their partner was on board and we went through the interview, then I would ask them to recommend people. And so then it's turned into a snowball sampling. And so equal partners would recommend equal partners. And that's how I got to know all of them. And it's interesting that none of them had like crazy C-suite jobs. I think I had one physician, a therapist, but no executives, no directors or president, like no one had that job that took more than 40 hours a week. And I think that I've thought a lot about that over time, because I think time is so important, and not just quality, but quantity. You don't know when those beautiful moments with your kids are going to happen. It's not when you dress them in matching outfits and pose in front of the fireplace. That's horrible. That always ends poorly.
That is terrible.
And it's not going to be that soccer game on Sunday afternoon. Like, you just never know. I feel like some of the most memorable moments I have with my kids were like funny conversations we had in the car on the way to school, or just something goofy that happens at bath time, or
around the dinner table.
Or you realize that your 3-year-old knows like every single lyric to a Bruno Mars song, and you're like, maybe that's not a good idea. Those are the gems of parenthood, and that comes with quantity. And so if your job requires that you're in an office for 100 hours a week, I don't know where that that's a great conversation that I love. I'd love to hear from people about how to be an involved parent when you have one of those jobs. The 40 men that I found didn't. All of them had a job that was manageable. and they could work their hours. I had 2 stay-at-home dads in my data set of 40, and the other 38 did work full time, but they had manageable jobs where they could take off an afternoon to take a kid to the doctor, or they could take off a week to care for someone. And that was a critical part of their routine.
I feel like if you talk to somebody in that realm that you're talking about, where it's a dad who works really long hours and whatnot, if I was one of them, I would not want to be on record as saying, yeah, like I work all this time and I miss out on everything with my kid. I'd probably make them feel awful, but I get what you're saying because it makes total sense. And I've had that conversation with guys off the record that are like, yeah, I work so much, like I don't get time with my kids. And they're like, it's horrible. But at the same and I've posted them like, well, have you thought about maybe looking for something that isn't so time consuming? And they're just like, our entire lifestyle would change and it would be just a complete disaster. And I'm like, that's a choice that you're making there. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting definition of disaster, right? I mean, and unfortunately there are jobs out there that just require, and I hope that we see a shift. I hope that in the future there are finance jobs that allow you to work 40 hours, that there are VP jobs that, I think that there are jobs right now, being a partner at a law firm, that just, they require an incredible amount of hours in an office setting. And it would be lovely if we could change our culture so that every job came with the option of flexibility or balance.
Yeah. I was listening to I listen to a lot of times in the mornings a local AM radio station, which is kind of a big one here in the area. It's a 700 WLW, and the guys on there, they're very interesting because they're very right conservative, that kind of deal. But I get a lot of good news, and also too, it's just kind of interesting to hear what they have to talk about. But today specifically, they were talking about there seems like this overwhelming amount of like house husbands, kind of going on, and like where are the men working out in the workplace? And I'm like, the whole time I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, they're working, they are doing stuff, but they have figured out how to prioritize, what's more important, working tons of hours or being around their family. And I even had that conversation driving Uber with a lady that actually, her name is Julie Balke, and she comes on, and she's a very big on 700 on Wednesdays, where she comes in and talks about careers and things along those lines. And we had this amazing conversation where she was just like almost interviewing me while we were driving, because she was just so like amazed by the fact that how my wife and I had structured our family and how we were doing things, and just talking to her about like stay-at-home dad life and all this different stuff. And just the fact that I've figured out a way to make money on the side doing these things, and like provide for my family in these ways. And she was just like, I've been trying to like basically like preach that to boomers for I don't know how long, and she is herself a boomer as well, so like that's why she was saying that too. And she talks about that on the show all the time. But she's like, I'm always trying to teach this older generation that the younger generation is not lazy. They actually are very creative on how they go about living their life compared to how people who are older grew up living their life.
Yeah.
Although it is kind of sad that a lot of the data that we have, the millennials do not have partnerships any more equal than boomers, and that Gen Z is not looking particularly hopeful. So it's interesting. The generations are becoming much more comfortable with gender fluidity. They're comfortable with changing pronouns. They're comfortable with sort of outside of box. But when a heterosexual couple partners up and goes and settles down, there's just this lifetime of norms that settle in, and there's all these assumptions. One thing that I hear all the time still, even couples that will say, oh yeah, we're totally equal, we believe in equality, we're 50-50, then I'll hear the husband say, yeah, but she manages all the stuff in the house because she's just better at multitasking. And I'm just like, no, she's not better at don't undersell yourself. You're totally able to multitask. You're totally able to anticipate your kids' needs. She is doing that because she was raised to believe that that was her job. And so she has learned the coping skills around how to be a multitasker at home. It is a learned skill. There's no reason why a person of any gender can learn that skill set. And I think that just, being willing, not all the time, but once in a while, when someone says something like that, to just be like, I don't think that's true anymore. It's 2022. It's almost 2023.
Right.
Can we move beyond that a little bit? And I think that usually when I push back, people, like you said, like the people that stayed in your house, if you're able to have a conversation and explain a different perspective, oftentimes it doesn't take as long as you think for people to be like, oh yeah, you've got a point. So it just takes saying, I don't think I believe that anymore.
I feel like I have a lot of those conversations when I'm, like I said, when I drive Uber, because like I just very specifically remember a conversation with a young man who he's in the Army, and he said that he was getting ready to go back after he took some time off, and we were talking about the fact that I'm a stay-at-home dad, and that I am ex-military as well. And so we were talking about just sort of like, sometimes it's one of those deals where it's like, you're in, and then you're out, and then you got to figure out how to make it work. You can't just, it's not always going to be the same, and you got to be able to pivot. And I was like, it's also, I feel like a lot of times, being a parent, it's like being on the battlefield. Like you might have a plan in mind, but it don't take much for a bomb to go off or something. And it's like, we've got to change plan real quick. We got to figure something else out, type of deal. And
that's a great analogy.
And I had this like 15-minute conversation in the car with him because he was a captive audience to it. And in the end, he was just like, it was great because in the end, he was like, man, you've given me a lot to think about. Like, I really like, he's like, I look at my dad and my brothers and my uncles and stuff, and they're very much like, you're the man. These are the things that you're supposed to do. He's like, but you're telling me that like, I don't have to fit into that box. And I'm like, no, you do not have to fit into that box. No, like no one has ever had to fit into that box. Unfortunately, that box has been put there, and people just feel like, because all these other people have said this is what you're supposed to do, that you just need to fall in line like a lemming. And that's not the case. Like you can break out of the box. You can break off all the generational chains that have been strapped on everybody else, and you can make your own way for your family. And that's the thing that our family has done. And it's kind of interesting because I feel like that falls in line with chapter 8 in your book, which you put into the email here about raising the next generation of boys so that they're capable of equal partnership. And you said that you're how old is your son? Is he 8?
He's 8. I have an 11-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son.
So I have a 9-year-old son and I have a 7-year-old daughter, and that topic is very much like on the forefront in our family, because I don't want my son to just basically go about this like, this is how I'm supposed to be, that these are the things that, like, these are the roles I'm supposed to play, kind of deal. And it's like, no, man, it's like, I want him to see that he has the capability to plug himself in to different areas of life and be fine with it. So, and I feel like it's one of those deals where there's a country music song where it talks about like the kid like watching everything that his dad does, and even as far as like what he says and things like that. And I've always like kept that.
Cusses.
He does, yeah.
He cusses.
He does. He cusses.
Where'd you hear that? I was watching you, Dad.
I was watching you, Dad.
Come on.
I want to say it's Rodney Carrington, but I'm not sure that's who it is. But but it's just that whole idea of trying to be a good role model to my kids, and also to being a good role model to other boys. Like when I go to school, I have a lot of his buddies seeing me at school, and I've sat there before and they're like, how is it that you're able to come in here? My dad can't come in here to school. And having that conversation about like, well, this is my role in the family and this is what I do. And, they have so many questions. And once you put that out there, but it's so great. I've enjoyed every conversation I've had with the 4th graders that I sit down at lunch with from time to time.
That's great. And I learned from the EP40 that some of their biggest role models were not their parents. In fact, very few, I think 2 of them came from households that role modeled equality, and 38 of them came from either traditional households. Several came from violent and abusive households and had parents who struggled with substance abuse and violence. And one in particular grew up in and out of shelters because their dad was so violent. And so you know, they found role models in uncles and neighbors and camp counselors and teachers and coaches. And so I think that when you hear those stories, you realize we all have so much more influence than we think we do. It's not just our own kids that we can influence. It's any kid that touches our life. And it doesn't matter if it's daily or 1 week a year, but it matters. And I think that when we think about the words we use and the actions that we choose to have, and I think being authentic, going back to what, you mentioned about the title, if you are your own authentic self and you are genuine and your kid sees that, then it's sort of telling them, and you can then repeat it sort of with words to emphasize it, but to say, I am myself and I'm comfortable with who I am and I'm accepted for who I am. And I want you to be yourself. And it doesn't, again, going back to your box, you don't have to do anything that fits inside a box that you think society wants you to be in. I just want you to be who you are.
Yes.
And I learned through my research that it's extremely important, especially with young boys, with all kids, but especially boys, that we don't accept mad, glad, and sad. That when we say, how are you? If they say, I'm mad or I'm sad, don't accept that and dig a little deeper. Yes. Can we find another word that articulates that feeling? Are you frustrated? Are you feeling left out? Are you feeling failure? Find something that's more precise, because boys they're not encouraged to go further. And so they have a hard time, even into adulthood, putting a word with that emotion that they have, which then hurts their connections with other people, right? So one of the best gifts we can give to our sons is just articulating your feelings and accepting your feeling, whatever you're feeling on any given day.
Yes. The emotional self-awareness to me has been one of the most important things that my kids picked up, that they talk to other kids and I hear conversations between them and the other kids just don't have the words. No. They don't. And it's just like just a reading vocabulary, just the vocabulary that you have strengthens your ability to handle the world. Well, what is that thing? I know what that thing is because I know that word. It's the same thing when they're feeling those emotions, especially when most men are offered, well, you can be angry. That's okay. Anything else we we got to watch that one. Yeah. Okay. But anger is a secondary emotions. And even my 8-year-old knows this by now. And she'll get mad and she's really mad today. She came in and she's not talking until Christmas. Right. That's how mad she is. And she'll be fine, of course. Right, but she came in and she showed me a note and I'm like, I told you you can't come in and talk to me. And I know she thought, well, I'm not talking to you. Here's a note. Right. But she understands that anger that she's feeling, and she wrote it down. She said, well, I'm feeling very angry, which is because of my frustration. And I'm frustrated because this and this and this. And then teaching too what you need to resolve that feeling or to process that feeling. If you just, and they will tell me, look, I'm very angry because I've gotten very frustrated with my brother and I just need a hug. Or I just need some time away. And I can't tell you how amazing my life would have been if I had known this growing up, if my parents had taught me just the words, because you get that feeling and you don't know how to resolve it. You don't know what it's called. And because anger is the only thing that boys really are said they can, really shown they can have. You're not really allowed even to hug your mom is kind of whoa, what's that? What, you love your mom? Why wouldn't you hug your mom? What kind of a monster are you, right? But I love that chapter is specifically about those things. And I can't wait to read it, really, because it is so very important to have that vocabulary, that self-awareness, that emotional self-awareness. I'd love to hear that that's in the book, and I can't wait to read it.
Thank you. And one thing that I'll add, which it's not in the book because it's come up since I wrote it, but I've just been thinking through this the last couple months is my daughter's 11. And so we have the books in the house now about like your body's changing and you're going to have your first period soon. And we're reading that book with her and my son at the same time. And he has great questions, and it has destigmatized the whole having a period thing, and has made my son totally 100% comfortable with that conversation about girls and differences. And it doesn't feel taboo to him, and it doesn't feel mysterious. It's just part of his sister's body. And I think that that's another great thing that we can do with our sons, is sort of there's like these female mysteries that we just don't talk about with boys. Why not?
Yeah,
right.
You know, if you grow up, you're going to have a partner or friends or coworkers. You should know this stuff. And beyond the map of the uterus that you learn about in 6th grade, you should understand the big picture.
Yep.
So I do think that there's a lot. I think culturally, we have already started we're better at raising our girls. I think in the last 10, 15, 20 years, we've really changed the way we raise girls. I don't think we've seen that big of a change in the way we've raised boys. And I think that's just getting started now. And I hope we see that, you know, big shift in the coming years.
Yeah. So kind of speaking to the whole, like, kind of destigmatizing that, I've seen a few times on, like, scrolling through TikTok where I've actually seen like young men who they have shown in their bathrooms, like of their apartment, like where they have actually gone out and bought feminine hygiene products because they have friends who are females that come over to their house and they want them to feel like this shouldn't be an issue. And so like I've seen them like open up the drawer in their bathroom and be like, I have this for my you know, my friends that come over. Or I've seen a few where a male teacher, you know, like, hey, I understand that I have, you know, female students that might need something. They can get up at any point in time. They don't have to ask. They can go get it, go do what they need to do, and that's fine. And like, there needs to be no big show. There needs to be no question about it, type of thing. And those are the kind of things that make me really smile and give a silver, like, okay,
that's
like,
awesome.
We are moving in the right direction on this.
Yes.
These are the things that I want
these
are the things that I want my son. I want my son's kids. I want my daughter's friends who are boys to understand, so that there doesn't have to be this all like, ooh, ick, like blah, whatever it is, kind of reaction to you know, that whole idea of it's just part of life.
It's our body, right?
It is, yeah.
Right.
The inability to buy tampons just boggles my mind. I just can't, because I know when I lived in Georgia until recently, and I was in, you know, whatever store, and I was just picking them up because I have my wife, and my oldest was actually assigned female at birth, so he still has a period, and I'm standing, okay, so I need these and these, and there's a guy standing there like, he looks like he would rather be dead. He was just mortified to have to stand there and like, oh, and I'm like, hey bud, you need some help? You know, because I'm just, this is not I mean, it was nothing I knew about before I had children, to be honest, but it's something that, again, you learn, like you said, you want to teach your kids, this is how a body works, and it's not gross. It's not, you know, I mean, body's birth and all that is kind of gross at times. Let's say,
bodies can be gross.
It can be completely disgusting, but no ick factor, right?
Right. And a body that has like female traits isn't grosser than, right? We want to like destigmatize all of the gendery stuff around it, and just, you know, bodies are bodies. And I think that's a really healthy place to start with kids.
Definitely. Well, this book, I am excited. Like, my voice. Wow. This
Need
book.
Some more beer?
No, I don't.
I have enough.
Your book, Equality Partners, it became available back in June. So that's one of the great things that for our listeners, they can get a hold of it. It's already out there, which is awesome. I think that this topic, we could talk about it for another hour in a lot of ways, but I want to respect everybody's time and things. But just so that people can find you, Kate, like where are the best ways to come into contact with you online?
So my Twitter handle is at Mangino Kate, and for as long as that lasts. And I am on Instagram. I have the same handle on Instagram, but I can't figure out how to work Instagram. So that's on my to-do list in the next few weeks, is to be better at that. But I am there. And then I have a website, katemangino.com, and my emails address is right up there. And readers write me all the time just with their thoughts and questions. And I love people who engage and follow up. And I've probably had more men reach out to me than women, a couple non-binary people. And I love that sort of the unusual suspects have written to me and said, I felt heard, because a lot of this conversation focuses on heteronormative families with people with kids. And, I'm trying really hard to say, this is a topic of conversation that we all need to take on. It doesn't matter if you're a parent or not. It doesn't matter what your gender identity is. These are roles that we play in a household. It's not linked to our DNA. It can change, it can evolve. And if we're constantly just tasking married people with kids under 15 with solving inequality in the household, we're never going to get anywhere, because those are the people who are like the busiest people ever, because they're balancing so much. So I really, I encourage grandparents and aunts and uncles and friends and neighbors, anyone who feels like they believe in gender equality and they want to make a change in their life. They want to think about the words that they can use, the actions they can take, the ways that they can be supportive to those people in their family and their community. I encourage you to pick it up. And it's, brick and mortar stores, it's online, it's in an Audible format. Lots of libraries have it. If you don't want to invest the money, just check out your local library. And I have a lot of action steps, hoping to help people think through not just the theory behind it, but what can you actually do to make a change in your own life?
Yeah, definitely. And you also on your website have the ability to sign up for your newsletter, which just going to plug that I saw where you spoke with us, got some stuff on there, but you also have like these connections with some other dad communities, and you talk about the ability for you to be able to just like as a mom be able to connect with other moms and get a question asked really quickly, and what does that look like for a dad. And there actually are communities out there, and so I love the fact that you are highlighting those for your readers to be able to find, and hopefully other dads are that are looking know that there are other groups out there to join that probably fall in line with the things that they are involved in, the things that they do. And especially if they're, a stay-at-home dad, like we've got so many different avenues now compared to what we had when we first started years ago. So I really appreciate the fact that you reached out to us for being a part of that. But I honestly, I got to say thanks to Brian and who else was it that I forget? It was Brian, and who else that
was it Brian Anderson?
It was Brian
Anderson. Yep.
Yeah.
Fathering Together.
So shout out to Fathering Together.
I see his book.
I see the book back there. Yeah.
Yeah. His book is behind me too.
I'm not going to pick mine up and show it off but yeah, it's a great book. I'm enjoying it.
And I did, I got a really sweet email after my Substack went out last week. It was forwarded to this guy, friend of a friend, and he is a new New York City resident, a stay-at-home dad, feeling super isolated, was really happy to hear about you. So I think there are probably still a lot of men out there who feel like I'm the only one who's doing this, and I feel really lonely. And you might not be the majority for sure, but there are so many other men like you. And I just think the more opportunities we can have for connection is really important.
Yeah, definitely.
Yay, dad groups.
Yay. Yes. Yay, dad groups.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. Honestly, like this has been, like I said, a great conversation, and hopefully folks, as they listen to the episode, that they comment and the conversation continues, because there is lots more conversation to be had and lots more to be done to bring in more gender equality throughout the world. So thanks, and hope that we get to talk to you again, maybe when you know, another book
Anytime.
comes around or something like that.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Definitely. All right. Have a good one, everybody.
I'm a dad, that's what I do.